Yeah.
There you go. Well, I look forward to talking.
Cool. Well, first of all, welcome to Ride the Omnibus. I'm Ariel Basca. Our podcast is parked at the intersection of pop culture and social justice. I myself am a filmmaker, podcaster, author, and I was absolutely delighted to see Diary of a Spy. I was not sure what to expect from it, but it was probably the most sort of human thriller I have seen in a very long time. I myself make genre films. I work in the realm of horror, and it's so unusual to see a film with such intimate kinds of performances and raw vulnerability within the dialogue that doesn't quite translate exactly the way you would expect. And I wondered if you could comment a little bit on, first of all, what caused you to make this film to begin with. I and where that vulnerability comes from.
Well, thanks for saying that, Ariel. I I think that, well, first off, I don't make genre films, so this is the first time I've ever even gotten close to a genre, so that might be part of it. I love genre films as a fan, but it's not super my sensibility. My previous two movies are character-driven dramas. The second one, Newly Single, is like a character-driven drama, but it's also a very dark comedy. But regardless, both of them are character pieces. So I think that that comes just from that's how I approach this. But then it's also like what I'm a fan of. Like I think that um, when I went into this one, it was like sort of referencing a lot of these, well, some spy movies that aren't really made anymore, like sort of like a lot of things that have been influenced by John le Carre novels, but then also like I would just say like John Cassavetes movies
Mm-hmm.
or Clute or some of Robert Altman's work. That's always been sort of like my, those have been some of my biggest influences. So the reason I've always been attracted to the genre of a spy, because I am a fan of the genre, it is not because of explosions or I love Jason Bourne, I love James Bond and all that kind of stuff too. Like we always like that in like sort of a pop culture level, and it's provide a lot of entertainment. But really, what's always attracted to me to the spy genre is the concept of somebody being alone and doing something off in a world where they might not have the camaraderie or the community that someone in a different, more traditional career may have.
Mm. Yeah, and it's that sensibility definitely comes through in the film, but it's fascinating to kind of watch this spy thriller that is just as tense and just as electrifying as the action thrillers that you see, because the storyline and the characters are connect so strongly. So I wondered though if you could talk a little bit about the true story behind this, because I think that's a fascinating.
Sure, you're kind to say that. I hope it is engaging, but yeah, the true story behind it is that I have a childhood friend who um, like slightly after college came to me, and I had been hanging out with him a lot. He just was sort of like, I'm interviewing for the CIA. If I get this, I'll never be able to tell you about it. So I'm just telling you because I'm going in for this interview tomorrow. Maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't. So we never talked about it again, sort of in the pretense of the previous statement I just made. But it became clear to me and to some of our other close friends that he was likely probably working in a job like this, just because the actual jobs he had were these sort of like mundane government jobs that were in nonsensical places. So as my relationship evolved over the year, we kind of lost touch, me and him. But then in towards the end of 2017, he was going through a divorce, and he was relocated to Los Angeles, and we started connecting again, like a very personal way. We were drinking a lot at night, and he started telling me about this case that he was working, and the stories that he told me during that period ended up being the inspiration for Diary of a Spy. So he's mainly the George character played by John Lindstrom, and the two characters, Camden and Anna, that are our two main characters. I've met in passing, but I'm really hearing that those stories were inspired by the sort of filter of the George character.
Hmm. That's fascinating. And I just wonder, how many of these stories, come that close to the truth, like, beheading a dog in the middle of the night. I'm just
Well,
really
the dog wasn't beheaded, so it's not to add a spoiler. But
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
no, 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 no,
I
no.
don't
I
mean
mean,
to
I don't.
make people think the dog dies in your movie. I apologize.
No dogs were harmed in theme or in literally. I think that a lot of it is very truthful. So what I didn't have previous. So I would say like the events in the film are very much based on truth in terms of like plot points, locations, tasks from point A to point B. I obviously wasn't there in these events, so the dialogue that's centered around the intimacy and the love and the relationship between those two main characters, obviously that's a lot based on just my writing, or I guess my own personal or interpersonal experiences with friends or the opposite sex or whatnot. But no, a lot of the actual just like plot points are based at least on what I was told from him.
Wow. And what also strikes me about this film is that you strike a very careful balance in terms of the way that you portray the Saudi characters within the film. A lot of films in the spy genre specifically definitely delve into a bit of Islamophobia, while they're, presenting an image of kind of what the Middle East is as kind of a monolith, and what Middle Eastern characters are like as a monolith. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's absolutely phenomenal what you do with the character. I'm afraid I can't remember her name. Uh,
Fada, the
Fada.
princess.
Okay,
Right.
yes,
Okay.
Fada the
Right.
princess. She she as a character is so compelling and so kind of warm and terrifying at the same time, that I think, you did a very good job of kind of playing that line. But I wondered if, how hard was that, and how deliberate was that in constructing the narrative?
Well, I really appreciate you bringing it up. So, I mean, to be honest, it's something that I'm very conscious of, and it's also something that I wouldn't say terrified of, but I like hope that other people feel the same way as you. The film hasn't come out yet; it comes out later this week, and that's something that's just so important to me. So, first off, Paulina Liha, who plays Fada, I think did a great job. She is of Middle Eastern descent. She's both Saudi and Lebanese, but she grew up in Mexico. So I think she did a great job in, channeling family members and friends and other people that she was very close to come up with that character. That being said, though, it's like I have a lot of reverence. I didn't want to come across, as you said, as Islamic with a level of Islamophobia, or I just wanted to sort of like make human characters. I think that I have a little bit of a soft spot for the Middle East, perhaps. I mean, like I'm Skyping with you right now, or Zooming with you, or whatever we're doing from Istanbul. So I'm living in Istanbul right now. I'm doing my next film here. My family lived here in this part of the world. Excuse me. My family lived here in this part of the world for hundreds of years. They were exiled in the mid 1960s. They're Greek, and the Turks and the Greeks sort of parted ways in the mid 1960s for Istanbul, to put it lightly. But they've had me back, so thank God. But yeah, I mean, I think that comes from a few different places. One is that I was dealing with somebody, the person, this is based on real life. I was dealing with somebody who was dealing with these people directly. So I was hearing about them and interacting with them in a personal way. Secondly, though, I mean, I think the reason I am a fan of these movies, like that I earlier referenced, like John Cassavetes or Clute or these John le Carre adaptations, it's because of the human element of them. And I think that I've just never really been attracted to stories where you have these archetypal villains or characters. I guess there are Middle Eastern characters in this film that are both villains and not villains. I guess they're, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do know exactly what you mean. And I feel very strongly about this aspect of this film. As someone who grew up with one of my childhood best friends was from the Middle East, and watching her constantly struggling with different forms of xenophobia throughout her life is something that for me has always been really important. And so I was honestly kind of terrified to watch this film knowing what it was about, because I was
Hmm.
just so anxious that I was going to see more of that. And so
Yeah.
it was such a refreshing delight. So
Oh, I appreciate that very much.
yeah. But I also wondered if you could comment a little bit on kind of how you built out the characters of Anna and Camden. Was that something that uh, when you built up their dialogue and their backstories and so forth, was that on any part kind of a deliberate construction of how you see uh, characters who are how do I put this? I'm sorry.
No, take your
I'm
time.
having a brain fart at the moment. I wondered about the relationship between Camden and Anna, because it is so unique and there are so many elements of Camden's way of interacting with the world that feel very neurodiverse.
Okay.
And I didn't know if that was a deliberate part of the story or if that was just me reading into it as a neurodiverse person.
Um, well, I think that that's interesting. I don't know I don't know what parts of it are conscious and what parts of it are unconscious for a couple of reasons. First off, to reuse that word you just used, neurodiverse, I think I have a lot of people that in my life that I would describe as complex people that embody some of those traits. So I think that perhaps a lot of my own personal life experience has been around people similar to how you see Camden. I think that the people that are working in intelligence that I've interacted with are incredibly complex people that are, I think, fodder for both those characters. And then the last thing I would say, just as a writer director, the writing is the part that I like the least. Like I really enjoy directing a movie very much, and I like the collaboration, working with people in the actualization, and I enjoy the post production process very very much. I hate the writing process. I find it to be arduous and isolating, and honestly, I never feel like I'm very good at it. But I would say what I would say is this: I would say that some of the things I've written that I think are the best things I've written, I don't know if they really come from me. They're just sort of like when you reach sort of states where I feel like you're almost like a vessel for something coming from some other place. So um, I think that there's parts of this movie that I can identify as being very intentional and from me, but sort of like this specific point you're picking up on, I don't I don't know if it's a subconscious thing or if it's there's like a real life Camden spirit out there that just just used me
Just
as a
visited
vessel.
upon you.
Yeah, like, and I mean that only slightly as a joke, really, because like there I believe is like when you're writing that there really is something that's coming from some other place, and I don't know if that's just my on not understanding the complexity of the world we're existing in, or the complexity of the human brain, or if there is actually some sort of higher power that I'm, not conscious of. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I can't tell you. I don't think it was really me fully.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Like, um, someone that I actually interacted with when I was younger, who died several years ago, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, had this whole theory of flow that,
Okay. Right.
you get into a flow state, when you get deep in the thick of writing or painting or
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, and that, it's a trance, and that it's related to what the Sufis experience. And he did all of this research kind of on how flow works from a religious standpoint, from a work standpoint, etc. And um, I think that's some of what you're describing and how that fits into that.
Yeah, no, certainly. And his work has been so important also like the sports space, right? It's just transcended so many aspects of our culture now. And I believe that, and I definitely can understand that feeling. And I feel that some of the best work is during that feeling, during that state. Um, I just like honestly think it might even go an additional level though. Like I sometimes
Oh
think it's
wow.
like might actually like not even be me, that I might just be just some sort of thing there that, that some sort of like spirit or being or deity or something just like wants to tell a story through. I didn't feel that so much on this film as much as I did the first two. Like the first two, especially in writing those, like I really, and the newest one I'm writing here, I really felt like there were parts that were unconscious. But I think that there were parts of the dialogue where I felt that way on Diary of a Spy. But I think what was interesting with Diary of a Spy is it was my first time working in a genre, so I was trying to work within the confines of that structure, a structure that I had never played with before. And I don't think this is like the strongest adherent to a genre structure by any means. It's certainly like a dialogue driven film, but yeah.
Well, yeah, it's fascinating, and working within the structure of genre in such a different way, the way that you do, makes it an even more powerful film, I would argue.
Oh
Um,
well, thanks. I appreciate that.
yeah, and I just wondered, like, did you have um, conflict at any point with how you were telling certain elements of the story with producers or collaborators, or was everyone kind of on the same page?
Well, I mean, I mean, there's part of making a movie is certainly conflict, right? I guess as your job as a director, I think, and you certainly must know this, Ariel. It's like it's sort of not mitigating conflict, but finding everybody's differing opinions and finding how they can sort of web together to make one cohesive vision. So I would say I was pretty lucky on this one in terms of like the cinematographer and I were really on the same page, and the actors were really on the same page, and the producer was wonderful. So David McFarlane, the producer, or David McFarlane, the cinematographer, like really, I think, created an environment with the crew that was very positive. David Visti, the producer, I think, is also a super positive person. And Tamara and Reese are also very positive people. So I think that there was a very collaborative, upbeat attitude on this set, more so than I had experienced in the past, that helped everybody sort of come in with a good attitude every day and deal with everything positively. I would say though, like there is always like the conflict of ideas, right? Because when you deal with a series of department heads and actors, and a producer, or producers, everybody has different ideas about everything. And I think one of the hardest things about making or directing a movie is that sometimes people have individual ideas that are actually better than the idea that you have, but you can't implement it because it on its own might stick out or not sort of like match with everything else, where um so, so it's like, I think the hardest part for me as being a director is trying to deal with a great idea that's bad for the movie. And people, it's hard to explain that to people, and I think that's part of the part. I think that's the hardest part of being a director or directing a movie.
Wow. I, putting it that way is, you know, actually kind of a masterful point, because I don't think a lot of people appreciate exactly how that shakes out in the collaborative process. But that, yeah, that's that's definitely a thing. That's definitely a thing. And I would also, kind of ask, like, in terms of your team of collaborators that you had around you, did you have other people from Middle Eastern backgrounds who were on the team, who were kind of helping you with the Arabic or other elements that were added into the script?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And I should mention this. So I was so lucky. The production company who made this, Divide and Conquer, the primary production company, the owners of that company I've known for many, many years, and they produced my first two movies. But they were in Atlanta on a job during this. I think they were, gosh, I can't remember what it was. I think they might have been doing that Freaky Universal movie, or maybe that was right. It doesn't matter. David Visti, who is a very good friend of mine, who had worked with them and worked at that company for many, many years. I had the great opportunity of working with him for the first time on this movie. And David actually grew up in Egypt. He grew up in Egypt, and and also Palestine, both. He's a quintessentially Midwestern looking kid from Wisconsin, but his parents worked for NGOs throughout his entire childhood. So he grew up in the Middle East, and he's fluent in Arabic, and his brother's fluent in Arabic, and both of them were very instrumental to me throughout the writing process and throughout the set. And then almost all the not almost all the Middle Eastern characters are Middle Eastern. I mean, they're all Middle Eastern in the sense of like they're from the Middle East. I actually don't even think there's a Middle Eastern character in the film who was even second generation. So I was very, that was a big process, and some of the Arabic that was spoken on set was, improvised by the actors. And yeah, so yeah, we didn't just like, find. I had a lot of help. Like it was hardly at all me.
Yeah, and it shows that you had a lot of collaborators in the process as well, I think. Just because it feels so true to life in a lot of ways, in a way that you can only really achieve when you've got a variety of perspectives.
Oh, thank you. Also, gosh, and also David McFarland, the cinematographer, he shot a film just right before this that premiered at Venice, called Screwdriver, that shot entirely in Palestine. So he also has, yeah, a lot of experience in this space. Oh, and he's also shot in Saudi Arabia too. So yeah, I guess it was just a good collaboration of all the forces came together.
Yeah. And there's a sensitivity to those perspectives that I don't think you get from typical teams working on, a spy thriller. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. I come from a pretty diverse background in the sense that like my dad's family is incredibly waspy. So you wait for it. Hey, they've been in America since I think like the 1630s, and my mom is a first generation American. And I think that like the two cultures, growing up, it was always, I saw like the contrast on almost a daily basis, because my two grandparents, my two families were like the exact opposite in a lot of ways. So I think it's like that authenticity, it's probably more important to me than maybe people who grew up with two parents that came from the same background. Seeing like their great contrasts, I think made me more like understanding of the subtle differences of cultures, that might be more than just like my skin color or more than just, appearance. It's just like, even two people that look similar can be completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those cultural differences are really compelling.
I agree. I agree. I think it's one of the beautiful things about life.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. This has been a real pleasure, and I hope that you have a lot of success with this film. And I want to encourage our audience to check out Diary of a Spy, coming out on VOD July 16th. Is that correct?
I think the
Or
15th
July
is that
15th. I'm sorry, July
okay.
15th. I'll
It's all
edit
right.
that in.
It's all right. I think if somebody tunes in on the 16th. But it was really nice meeting you, Ariel, and I look forward to watching your movies. I appreciate you talking to me.
Well, thank you so much. This is a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.